911, what's your emergency?
Oh my God, she's in the tank! Sir! Sir! What is happening? Who has her?
The whales! They've got her! They won't let her go! We can't get her out!
Have you ever truly loved something? Adored it with every fiber of your being? Maybe it was a pet, a dream, a career. You poured your heart into it, believed in its beauty, its power. You felt a connection, a bond so profound it seemed unbreakable. But what if that love, that connection, held a secret? What if the very thing you cherished the most, the magnificent creature you dedicated your life to, became the instrument of your end? Imagine the cold shock of the water, the sudden, overwhelming darkness. Imagine the immense, powerful body of a predator, not attacking, not truly, but playing. And you, a fragile human, caught in a game you can never win. This is not just a story of a tragic accident. This is the story of a dream-turned nightmare, of the line between fascination and fatal danger, forever blurred by the unpredictable nature of the wild heart. This is the story of Keltie Byrne, a young woman who loved the ocean's giants and ultimately was taken by them. Keltie Byrne was not just a name in a headline. She was a spark, a force of nature drawn to the raw power of the sea. At 20 years old, she was a marine biology student, brimming with ambition and an insatiable curiosity for the aquatic world. Her hands-on experience at Sealand of the Pacific wasn't just a job, it was a calling. Every shift was a step closer to her dream of understanding the deepest mysteries of marine life, of working with these magnificent creatures that held such an undeniable allure. She spent her days learning, observing, and interacting with some of the ocean's most intelligent and formidable predators, orcas. The bond she felt with them, the understanding she believed she was building, was the driving force of her life. She saw their immense power, yes, but also their intelligence, their complex social structures, their almost human-like curiosity. For Keltie, these were not just animals in a tank. They were individual personalities, each with their own quirks and moods. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Fellow trainers spoke of her dedication, her bright smile, her unwavering passion. She was meticulous in her work, always eager to learn more about the behaviors of Tilikum, Haida II, and Nootka IV, the three orcas that would, in time, become tragically intertwined with her fate. She studied their patterns, their vocalizations, their subtle cues. She believed in the mission of Sealand, in the educational value of bringing these animals closer to people, allowing for a connection that she felt was crucial for conservation. Her life revolved around these massive, sleek bodies, the thrill of their power, and the quiet moments of connection she shared with them through the water. She was, in essence, living her dream, completely unaware of the looming shadow it casts. The stars of Sealand, the undisputed kings and queens of their aquatic domain, were the orcas. These weren't just any whales, they were Tilikum, a massive male, and two females, Haida II and Nootka IV. Orcas, often mistakenly called killer whales, are actually the largest members of the dolphin family. They can grow up to 32 feet long and weigh over 6 tons, a living, breathing torpedo of muscle and intelligence. Their sleek black and white bodies are perfectly adapted for cutting through water with incredible speed and agility. These specific orcas had a complex history. Tilikum, the male, was captured off the coast of Iceland. Haida II and Nootka IV were caught in Canadian waters. In the wild, orcas live in highly structured family pods, hunting cooperatively and exhibiting intricate social behaviors. But here, in the confines of Sealand, their natural dynamics were warped. Tilikum, in particular, was often on the receiving end of aggressive behavior from the two females. They would chase him, bully him, even force him into a smaller holding tank, a behavior rarely, if ever, seen in stable wild pods. This constant tension, this underlying current of aggression, was a ticking time bomb no one fully acknowledged. The facility itself, while seemingly state-of-the-art for its time, was small by modern standards, especially for creatures of such immense size and complex social needs. These were highly intelligent predators, used to boundless oceans, now confined to concrete pools. They were magnificent, awe-inspiring, but they were also wild, and beneath the surface of their trained behaviors lay an instinct, ancient and powerful, that no human could ever truly tame. Warnings, subtle and overt, were there for anyone willing to see them. The whale's immense size, their predatory nature, and their unpredictable social dynamics within the confined space were all factors that, in hindsight, screamed of potential danger. The warning signs weren't always sirens blaring, but they were there, a series of ripples in the calm surface of Sealand's daily operations. The constant underlying tension between Tilikum, Haida II, and Nootka Forum was an open secret among the trainers. Tilikum, the largest male, was perpetually the target of the two females' aggression. Trainers would often observe Haida II and Nootka Forum cornering him, nipping at him, or driving him into the smaller medical isolation pool. It was an unnatural dynamic, a clear deviation from the cohesive family structures seen in wild orcapods. This wasn't play, this was bullying, a sign of stress and frustration within the confined environment. Another critical factor was the prevailing philosophy at Sealand. Trainers did not typically enter the water with these specific orcas. While other parks might have had trainers in the water during shows, at Sealand, direct contact in the main performance pool was limited. This meant the whales were not accustomed to the presence of a human body, flailing and struggling in their domain. They were used to trainers on the side of the pool, giving commands, throwing fish. A human in the water, particularly one in distress, would be an entirely novel stimulus, a curiosity, a plaything, or perhaps even a perceived threat. There were whispers, too, of the animals' growing agitation, subtle shifts in their behavior that went beyond the usual training routine. Sometimes during shows, there would be unexpected lunges, or a trainer would have to quickly pull back. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to raise an eyebrow, to create a fleeting moment of unease. Yet, the show went on. The spectacle, the draw of these magnificent creatures, overshadowed the growing list of small incidents, the ignored warnings that piled up like kindling, waiting for a single spark. The belief in human control, the confidence in the established routine, blinded many to the inherent, unmanageable risk that lurked beneath the surface of the seemingly docile animals. The stage was set, the elements were converging, and an unseen timer was counting down to a moment that would change everything. February 20th, 1991. Just another Wednesday, the crisp, cool air of British Columbia carried the faint scent of salt and the distant cries of gulls. Inside Sealand of the Pacific, the atmosphere was routine, a hum of familiar activity after the last show of the day. Keltie Byrne, with her usual diligent focus, was completing her post-show duties. She was young, full of life, and entirely absorbed in her work. The giant orcas, Tilikum, Haida II, and Nootka Forum, glided silently in the deep blue water of their habitat, their massive forms barely visible beneath the surface. 4:45 p.m. Keltie was near the edge of the main pool, perhaps preparing to clean an area or adjusting some equipment. It was a mundane task, one she had performed countless times, but then it happened. A slip, a loss of footing. The concrete edge was wet, perhaps slick with spray. In a horrifying instant, Keltie Byrne, the vibrant young woman, tumbled. Her body hit the frigid water with a splash that echoed through the otherwise quiet facility. 4:46 p.m. The moment she breached the surface, gasping, the water became alive. The three orcas, immense and powerful, were instantly there. Not attacking with malice, not at first, but with an overwhelming, terrifying curiosity. Tilikum, Haida II, and Nootka Forum surrounded her. Their sheer size dwarfed her. One moment, Keltie was struggling to gain her bearings. The next, a massive black and white fluke, powerfully broad, swept across her, pushing her deeper. 4:47 p.m. She surfaced, a guttural scream tearing from her throat. "Help me! Get them off!" Her voice was raw with terror, echoing off the high ceilings of the facility. Other trainers, hearing the frantic splashing and her desperate cries, rushed to the poolside. Their faces, a mixture of horror and disbelief, stared down at the unfolding nightmare. They grabbed long poles, life rings, anything they could extend towards her. It was 4:48 p.m., but the whales were relentless. They seemed to view her as a new, unexpected toy. As soon as she reached for a life ring, Haida 2 would nudge her away with her rostrum, or Tilikum would power underneath, lifting her, then pulling her back down. The powerful force of their bodies, weighing tons, was inescapable. She was dragged repeatedly beneath the surface. Each time she vanished, the trainers held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. Each time she reappeared, gasping for air, it was a momentary reprieve before being pulled under again. 4:50 p.m. The water around her was churned into a frantic foam. Keltie's movements grew weaker. Her screams became more hoarse than just desperate gasps. The trainers on the side of the pool, their faces etched with anguish, tried everything. They banged on the side of the tank, they shouted commands, they threw more rings. But the orcas, particularly Tilikum, seemed to revel in the chaotic game. They would chase her, pin her, then release her, only to drag her down again before she could reach the surface. It was a terrifying, drawn-out torment, a macabre dance between overwhelming power and fragile humanity. 4:55 p.m. Time stretched agonizingly. The air grew heavy with the sound of splashing, the trainers' desperate shouts, and Keltie's diminishing cries. There were moments when she would almost make it to the edge, her fingers brushing the concrete, only for a massive tail fluke to slap down, forcing her back into the abyss. The cold, relentless water, the sheer size of her captors, and the physical exhaustion began to take their toll. Her movements became sluggish, her body heavier. 5 p.m., she was no longer screaming. The thrashing lessened. The moments she surfaced were fewer and further between. The trainers watched, helpless, as her body, no longer struggling, was still being pushed and pulled by the powerful animals. The terror in their eyes turned to a grim, sickening realization. The play had become something far darker. The game had claimed its victim. Just 5:15 p.m. Silence fell over the pool, broken only by the slosh of water as the orcas continued to glide, their massive bodies circling the area where Keltie had last been seen struggling. Her body, lifeless, remained in the depths of the tank, held by the creatures she had dedicated her life to understanding. It would take hours, a desperate and difficult effort involving large nets, to finally recover her remains from the water, a chilling testament to the overwhelming power of the wild, even in captivity. The sun began to set, casting long, mournful shadows over Sealand of the Pacific, a place forever marked by the tragedy that had just unfolded. The 911 call that day was a fragmented, terrifying testament to the chaos and desperation that erupted at Sealand. The dispatcher, accustomed to routine emergencies, was met with a scene beyond comprehension. "She's in the tank, the whales, they won't let her go." The voice on the other end was hysterical, breaking, punctuated by the horrific sounds of splashing and muffled screams. This wasn't a fire or a car crash. This was an unprecedented horror unfolding in real time. Within minutes, the first responders were on their way. Sirens wailed through the streets of Victoria, cutting through the late afternoon quiet. Police cars, then ambulances, converged on Sealand of the Pacific, their flashing lights painting the building in an urgent, strobing red and blue. Officers trained for human conflicts found themselves facing an impossible situation, a human victim held captive by multi-ton marine predators. When the officers entered the facility, the scene was one of stunned horror. Trainers, pale and shaking, pointed silently at the large Orca tank. The water, once a vibrant blue, seemed to hold a sinister stillness. The orcas, enormous and dark, moved with an unsettling grace, their dorsal fins occasionally breaking the surface. They looked, in that moment, like indifferent titans, holding their secret beneath the waves. Medics stood by, helpless. Their skills were for injuries, for life-saving measures. But there was no way to reach Keltie. Not with the whales still in the water, not with the knowledge of what had just transpired. Witness accounts from the trainers themselves were pieced together in hushed, tearful tones. They just kept dragging her down, one trainer recounted, voice trembling. She screamed. She tried to grab the pole, but they were too strong. Another described the harrowing sight of Keltie resurfacing, gasping for air, her face contorted in terror before being pulled back under. The details painted a picture of a prolonged, agonizing struggle, a fight against insurmountable odds. The realization that Keltie's body remained in the water, under the control of the very animals that had taken her life, added another layer of grim complexity to the recovery efforts. It wasn't a matter of simply pulling her out. The orcas had to be managed, coaxed, or even forced into a separate pool before a recovery could even be attempted. It took hours, an agonizing wait for everyone present, before large nets could finally be deployed to retrieve Keltie Byrne's lifeless body from the depths of the Orca tank. The silence that followed her recovery was profound, a heavy, somber curtain falling over the once lively marine park. The emergency response that day wasn't just about saving a life. It became about recovering a tragedy, about bearing witness to the terrifying power of nature, even when contained. The news hit like a tidal wave. Keltie Byrne's death wasn't just a local tragedy. It was a global shockwave. Orca kills trainer screamed headlines from Victoria to New York, Tokyo to London. The sheer horror of a young woman, a marine biology student, drowning in the jaws of the animal she loved, captivated and repulsed the world simultaneously. The autopsy confirmed the devastating truth. Keltie Byrne had died from forcible submersion, essentially drowned by the orcas. There were no signs of a direct, aggressive attack with bites or tearing. Instead, it was the relentless pushing, pulling, and preventing her from surfacing that led to her death. This distinction, while medically important, did little to lessen the public's outrage and fear. Media descended on Sealand of the Pacific like vultures, their cameras flashing, their microphones thrust towards grieving employees and shell-shocked officials. Every detail of Keltie's life, her aspirations, her bond with the animals, was dissected. The inherent risks of keeping such powerful predators in captivity were thrust into the harsh glare of public scrutiny. Protests erupted outside the park's gates. Animal rights activists who had long argued against marine mammal captivity found their warnings amplified 1,000-fold. Placards bearing Keltie's name, alongside slogans demanding the release of all captive orcas, became a common sight. Internally, Sealand was in turmoil. Investigations were launched, scrutinizing every safety protocol, every training method. The facility was already struggling financially, and the tragedy proved to be the final, fatal blow. Public attendance plummeted. The magic was gone, replaced by a dark shadow. In November 1992, less than 2 years after Keltie's death, Sealand of the Pacific closed its doors for good. The dream of bringing people closer to marine life had ended in a nightmare. And then there was Tilikum. The enormous male orca implicated in Keltie's death became a figure of dark fascination. Along with Haida II and Nuke 4, he was sold to SeaWorld, specifically SeaWorld Orlando. It was a transfer fraught with controversy, a move that merely shifted the problem, not solved it. What no one could have predicted then was that Keltie Byrne's death was not the end of Tilikum's tragic story, but merely the first chapter. He would go on to be involved in 2 more human fatalities. Daniel P. Dukes in 1999, a man who trespassed into his tank after hours, and most famously, the highly respected SeaWorld trainer, Don Broncho, in 2010. Tilikum's repeated involvement in human death cemented his notoriety and catapulted the debate over orca captivity into the global spotlight, culminating in the critically acclaimed documentary, Blackfish. Keltie Byrne's incident, once a horrifying individual tragedy, became a pivotal moment, a grim precedent that fundamentally reshaped how the world viewed marine parks and the majestic, untamable creatures they housed. Her death echoed through the years, a constant, chilling reminder of the raw, unpredictable power of the wild heart, even when confined. Keltie Byrne went to work that day, full of life, full of love for the giants of the sea. She believed in the connection, in the understanding she was building with these magnificent creatures. But her story, etched in the cold, unforgiving water of that tank, reminds us of a chilling truth. Some bonds are forged in curiosity, and some in the illusion of control. The wild, however captivating, however seemingly contained, can never truly be tamed. And sometimes the very thing you love the most, the creature that inspires your deepest awe, can become the force that pulls you into the final silent depths. Her scream still echoes in the quiet corners of that defunct park, a ghostly testament to the line between fascination and fatal danger. A line that Keltie Byrne, in her innocence and passion, tragically crossed. And the silent, dark water of the Orca tank holds its secrets still, whispering a timeless warning. The ocean's heart is beautiful, but it is also brutally, irrevocably wild.